video that I want to put together to show you how to go through the process of building your introduction for your rhetorical analysis papers. Now, as I said before, this is a little bit different than the way that you go through your academic paragraph model. And since we are on a snow week, if you will, I'm trying to make sure that I give you that information here. So what I've done right now is just create a text box so I can start to type in the things that are necessary for the intro in order to make sure that you have a very successful opening. Now, when I go through your feedback in my class, I will just be looking at the content that you provided initially. However, I do want you to make sure that you are incorporating this as you make your final steps in your revision process. So the first thing that you need in an intro is you need to have a hook. Now, the hook can be a variety of things. It can be a short story. And if it is a short story, helps if I spell it correctly, it's going to be something that's coming from the text. Maybe it's an example that you had within the text that you thought was important. So, there you go. It could also be a quote. Now, if it is a quote, again, this is something that needs to come from the text. But what you want to try to do is draw and connect the reader to the information that you're putting forward in your actual paper. As you can tell, I cannot type and talk, so sorry if there's a little pause in between when I start to give an example. One other thing that could end up being the hook could be a very strong example or illustration, which we get from the short story. So an example, maybe it's a statistic or a fact. Let's say it's something else might be a good example. If you have a case study that you very, very briefly go over, any of those sorts of things would be appropriate in this instance. So think of it like if you were getting ready to begin a recipe and you were going to give some description about how you were going to go through that process. This would be like you showing the end result first, the beautiful finished product, and then going back in and showing them what needs to be there. So only thing I'm doing right now, that's what I was trying to avoid doing. All right, so after you've created the hook, the next thing that you need to have, and again, all of this stuff is going to be located in that introductory paragraph of that 5-paragraph model that I showed you at the beginning of the semester. So after you have the hook, what you then want to do is create an author bio. Now, in the author bio, there's several key things that need to be there, and these things are specific to the rhetorical analysis essay. If you were writing, say, a position essay or just a regular argumentative essay, the thing that's different about these is the fact that you may be drawing on multiple artists and bringing a lot of different authors together, and so the author bio might shift, or it may not even be possible to put that in the introduction. So this is something that makes it unique to the rhetorical analysis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put a little asterisk by it, just so that you all remember that this is something that's unique about this particular essay type. No! Oh, I do not like how this thing works. All right, so let me try to... I don't know. Sorry, this video does not want to be my friend. Okay, so things that need to be in the author bio. Obviously, we want the author name. This is hugely important and it's often missed. Now, the things you need to remember is that in APA formatting, we would only use the first initial for the first name, and then the last name is appropriate. In most cases, I would suggest that you just get rid of the first initial altogether. But if you're introducing them as you do in this author bio, it makes good sense to give the first initial here. Other things that need to be present in this would be the title of the article. And the reason that this is often missed is because we forget that this is a rhetorical analysis. And so it's focusing on just one article. You're not drawing on multiple sources. So you need to have it established in the beginning. And then that way, throughout the rest of the paper, you can refer to the article or the author themselves, because you've said the name and you've said the article that they have written. And those are the two main components, again, things that are crucial to making sure that you have them in place for a rhetorical analysis essay. So once you've done the author's name, the author bio, other things that can be very important in this instance is to give a little bit of history about the author. Now, this depends on how the connection of the author's history affects the way that they would write the piece. So take, for instance, with Judy Brady in the Judy Brady piece. We know that this is a very politically charged piece. We also know that she's a female. We also know that she's a wife. We also know a lot of things. Now, this is where you would be doing a lot of the research that doesn't necessarily make it directly into your paper. So that outside searching that you're doing. Maybe it's done on Wikipedia. Maybe you read other things that they've written, or you at least look at the other things that have been written by them. It's basically doing a Google search on the author itself to get to know a little bit more about them. If the author is not available and you have an anonymous source, things to consider in those cases are the publication. I'm writing that down. So what I've written down here is the publication where the article is written. This history tells us a little bit more about why they've chosen this type of article if you've selected a piece that doesn't have an author present. It also gives us some context clues, right, to help us understand a little bit more about why this piece was written, why it was put into this particular publication, what are the things that might be in common. And again, that's some of that critical thinking that we've been discussing in class that is expected of you in academic writing in general, but most definitely in this class at a 1020 level. So again, we're thinking about either who is this person because they're named, or we're thinking, okay, why did this publication choose to write this piece and then not name the author? What is it about this publication that we need to consider? Things like that might be like the ASPCA. If you were to go and look online, they have a ton of websites where they have all of this information, but none of the articles are given by an author. Now, they may link you to something where then, again, over there, you'll find an author. But on the publication site itself, you're just going to get information, more like an encyclopedia, which is why that would be one that we would not quote. But what you can think about is if all of that information is placed in the ASPCA, what does that tell us? Well, it's about animals. It's against animal cruelty. It's about making sure that we're protecting animals. And then depending on what type of article it is, if it's about certain types of breeds or other groups that are treating them poorly, you get to kind of narrow down the focus of what they might be angling for with that information. Okay, so once you've done the author bio, the next thing that you need to make sure that you have in place, and this is really crucial, is a little bit of context. Now, again, this is unique to the rhetorical analysis essay, but it's something that's nice to incorporate somewhere within every paper that you write at the academic level. So context in this instance might be the year of the publication. It could be events that are going on surrounding this article. Oh no, did I just get rid of? Okay, there it all is. Surrounding article. Okay, this thing doesn't like me. I hope you guys are bearing with me and that you're finding this as humorous as I am not. Let's see. Yeah, so events surrounding it. I mean, and it doesn't need to be a lot, but like, let's say you were writing a piece written by an anonymous source, but it was written right after 9/11. 9/11 would be a context that we would need to understand. So we would need to know what year it happened. We would need to know like what sort of things were happening around that time. Was this person, again, going back into the author bio, were they a victim of being caught up in 9/11? Were they touched by it in some way because a family member or someone that they knew was involved? Those things all kind of work together to help set the scene for the way that you will interpret what they have to say. And that's what makes context so very important. Now, the final thing that you need to make sure that you have in your piece, I'm going to give myself a lot of room here, would be the thesis statement. Now, I'm going to discuss thesis statement in its own separate video in just a minute. And unfortunately, I'm not there to give you the handout, but I will put a link up to one so that you can at least see it and kind of work with it a little bit. If you were in a class that already received the handout, you do have that at your disposal. But the thing about the thesis statement, it is the main idea of the entire essay. And because it's the main idea of the entire essay that you're writing, it needs to be very clear and focused. And so a thesis statement can be divided into three main parts. Now, what I think I'm going to do is actually close this box and make three small ones to show you what it consists of. So the first thing that you need to make sure that you have in your thesis statement is the topic, the subject, the position that you're going for. So the subject, topic, the issue, and I will use a variety of words here. The problem, P there, ELEM, there we go, etc. And you will see over the course of the semester that I'll use a variety of different names in order to express this idea. But it's that thing, that topic, the issue, the problem. I don't know why it keeps doing that. All right, so the next big part that needs to be in a thesis statement has to do with your position or your stance. Think about like the point of view, your point of view. Oh man, okay, let me see if I start this again. Let's leave this blank and try to make the box bigger and see if we can get it all in. That's bigger, okay. Sometimes I'll refer to it as the stance, and we'll talk more about this when we get back into class next week. But think about like how there's a certain stance that you have to take depending on whatever it is that you do, whether you are athletic, and there are different stances that you take, say for baseball or for basketball, even for track or curling. I don't know, I'm just throwing things out. But it's that idea of there's a particular posture that you need to be in, and that same thing applies to your writing. There's a stance and a point of view that you have to take in order for you to be able to stay focused and clear in the way that you write. Finally, the last thing that you need to make sure that you have in a thesis statement is your supporting evidence. And that supporting evidence typically comes in groups of three. So you want three things that can either be the supporting evidence or they are the reasons that back up what you have, your position. And when you look at the handout that I'm going to see as well, we'll start to see how that breaks down a little bit in the next little video that I'm going to have for you. But what these three things do is they work together to create this one singular sentence that helps you to unify what your paper is going to be about, and it gives a very clear roadmap for what you're going to be discussing in your essay. Now, I know that this is really brief, and I'm sorry that in the time that it's taken at least 13 minutes for me to get this done for you today. But I wanted to try to give you a little bit of an overview of the things that need to be present in the introduction to your essay. And again, I can't type and write, and I'm sorry about that, guys. Okay, so in the introduction to the academic paper, what you want to make sure that you have when you're creating the intro is a hook, something that draws the reader in and helps them to understand that this is going to be a really interesting topic. So we're considering the audience and considering the material and merging those two things together. Next, you want to make sure that you have a short author bio. Now, this may take a couple of sentences, but in that author bio, you need to include the author's name. Now, in APA, it's either the first initial and the last name or just the last name. I suggest just the last name, but if you really want to put in a first name, you can only use the first letter of the name with a period and then the last name, and then that's it. So you want to name them. If they're not available, think about the publication that put that out and make sure that you list that. You also want to make sure that you have the title of the article. Oftentimes with rhetorical analysis, this gets missed, but it's crucial. So then we know what is actually being discussed. Next, you want to give a little bit of history, either about the author or the publication, if the author's name isn't present, so that we understand a little bit more as the reader why they may have decided to write this piece